Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Subnet Show. I am Gabriel Cardona, and I'm joined, as always, by the man with the most cats in crypto, Connor Daly. What is up, my friend?
So a few minutes ago, I was at a meeting, and I was looking in the corner of my video screen, and I just saw there's like kind of a cat bed down here. It's a little bit out of view right now, but I saw one of my cats in there, and it's like, that's strange. That's Flash's bed. What is Ollie doing in there? And then I turned around, and he was just laying on top of Flash. Full cat experience. Everybody in the video call got to see. It was a great time. But I'm doing well, Gabriel. Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, so it was cool. Last week, Connor and myself got to meet in person for the first time ever in Lisbon. It's kind of funny because we've done now, I don't know how many subnet shows, more than I think a dozen probably. And it's cool to finally meet in person. And Lisbon was an absolute success. I'm still looking forward to going back next year. I hope that we can continue to do that on a yearly basis. It was so successful, but now it's cool to be back in the flow of work. And something that I realized is Lisbon was hugely inspiring for me. This week I have been like really working hard. We always work hard, but I've just had a renewed sense of purpose and inspiration. When I was in Lisbon, I just took a step back and saw the big picture and realized, man, I'm so incredibly fortunate to work with this team and on this project and at this time and in this place. And it just made me extremely grateful and want to just put in the extra juice to make Avalanche, my contribution to the Avalanche experience and ecosystem all the more meaningful and all the more supercharged with, that energy. So it was cool. It was one of the most inspiring things I've done in many years. And it was cool to hang out with you, Connor. So speaking of the amazing ecosystem, we are very fortunate today to be joined by Mark Stanwyck. Mark is the co-founder, and I'm not sure what official title, other titles he holds, but with Avalaunch. Avalanche is an IDO, which I believe is initial DEX offering, but you can correct me if the acronym is off there. And as far as I know, it's the one and certainly the most successful. There might be competition now because our ecosystem is exploding, but Mark was there in the very beginning. Certainly the first IDO that launched on our platform, very successful. I think in the relative picture, we're still a small ecosystem, and I'm not sure that's one of the reasons we brought him on to touch bases where they're at. But from what I perceive it to have been a very savvy play on Mark's behalf. He was there early. He appreciated the potential to launch something huge on Avalanche in the early days, and he filled a niche which wasn't there in IDO, and it absolutely exploded. So thanks for joining us, Mark. Welcome to the Subnet Show.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure to finally connect. You're both people that I've spoken briefly with over the months and aware of. Gabriel, a little more you, Connor, not so much. Hopefully that changes, but it's nice to finally sit here face to face with you guys because it's a great ecosystem and you guys are important people in it.
I have great respect for Avalanche or Avalaunch, as you said earlier. Is that the correct pronunciation?
I think they're both right.
Okay. Yeah. I would say my funny story with you guys is right when you did your initial token offering,
yeah.
There was a little bit of community drama there, I think, and I wrote a Twitter thread about it, and that's the best Twitter thread I've ever written.
Well,
I did like a quarter million impressions.
Actual metrics. So it is the best performing one.
Yeah, I did like a 250,000 impressions in like 2 days.
well, funny story about that Twitter thread is because it's crypto, right? And stuff happens, and then you got to go and deal with the stuff, and it's kind of like how you deal with it that makes the team, right? At least that's how I look at it. And in that Twitter thread, you were talking about the nature of pangolin and what we should and shouldn't be able to do, right? And it kind of made my life really easy, relatively speaking, because I got to point to the Twitter thread and be like, see, he says it too. So I just kind of sort of let you take the heat for it.
Nice.
Yeah, man, I think you probably know better than anybody, but doing fair token launches is an incredibly hard proposition. And so I'm interested in digging into some of your thoughts on that. And I think, I guess, do you want to talk about a little bit like why it's a hard problem?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the launching a token, doing an IDO, any of those things, it's tricky because what you essentially have is you want to get this distributed broadly, you want to get it distributed fairly, but you have what is essentially a seemingly infinite amount of demand at times, like when you do your job and like, get people excited about what you're doing, and then a very, very finite amount of tokens or whatever to give away. And so meeting that demand while still figuring out how to make this thing feel fair, there's a lot of different strategies and approaches to it. And it's a very, very hard problem. And so with certain protocols, you can, if it's maybe a DeFi protocol or something like that, you put people to work and, do testnet stuff and, make it feel fair and, or, really creative, mining schemes. And, some of that stuff is just quite frankly beyond most people, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't like have a crack at a fair distribution. And so one of the things that is important about our platform outside of having this kind of coming out event to the public, I would say, is helping teams achieve that, is get these tokens distributed in a way that everyone feels good about, achieve some degree of relative fairness. And that's a pretty kind of intense topic, like fairness and what's fair and who gets what and why. Like you can talk about that for a really long time. And, we sort of try and offer that as a service almost while, helping people market and, get their good work in front of a community that cares about what they're going to do. And so that event going well is very, very important, because when it goes wrong, it can really haunt you, and it did us, for a little while with that launch. And we certainly had the best of intentions. And we made it through that, and it's not to like dramatize it too much, but it sucked, and it's like, it pulls you away from building and doing the thing and being happy and doing what you want to do. All you're worrying about is this having gone wrong. So it is really tricky. And that going wrong for us, while ironic, I think sort of kind of validated why we were doing it in the first place. Like it's a hard thing. A lot of teams aren't thinking like this or built for it. And we help them achieve that. At least that's part of what we do.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the fundamentals of an IDO. Like I know there's ICOs, I know there's STLs, I know there's IEOs, initial exchange offerings, secure token launches, initial coin offerings. Where does this fit in? What is the special sauce? What exactly is an IDO?
Yeah, well, IDO is actually like a bit of a misnomer, or well, it is a misnomer at this point. The initial DEX offering was something that came right after the ICO, after the IEO, and then in DeFi summer, when everyone was like getting really creative, you started seeing these things like bonding curve sales, and everyone was just playing with different mechanisms. And the IDO itself was a pretty simple approach to letting users kind of mine for, or liquidity mine for tokens. And then, platforms kind of stepped in and said, hey, we're going to try and like formalize this process a little bit. But the name IDO still sort of stuck, even though what we do isn't technically a DEX offering. And it's kind of funny. And I've often thought about trying to back out of this term somehow, but I think it might be too late. Because we're not an IDO platform. It's a misnomer. And so we do public sales of tokens.
Yeah. So I think the most naive implementation of an IDO. So basically it starts out with, I am building a DeFi product. I want to monetize this. I want to launch my token. So it's just that initial question of just how do I distribute my tokens to users? And preferably, if I want to make money off of this, how do I sell them? So I think when people do, there's no fair market price for a new project. You don't know until you've been tested. You just don't know what's the right price to list at. And so what people tried to do with these initial DEX offerings was they would go to a decentralized exchange like Uniswap or Pangolin, and they would just put up however many tokens they wanted to give away. They would create a liquidity pool with, say, 1,000 Connor tokens, and then they'd back it with 100 AVAX or something like that to create some initial price. And then people would put in, they would pay AVAX to buy these tokens. But really that creates this kind of like first come, first served marketplace. And because DEXs that are based off of Uniswap use this bonding curve pricing strategy, every buy order increases the price. And so when you know there's going to be a lot of demand for one of these projects, there's an incredible advantage to getting in early, because you will get the earlier you are, the better price you'll get, when essentially there's only going to be buy orders. And so there's even a common strategy where people will kind of create these bot armies to try to, or use MEV strategies to try to place their orders as quickly as possible to be first, let everyone else buy in later and shoot up the price, and then dump almost immediately, just to try to take advantage of the initial opportunity. And so you really end up privileging the most technically sophisticated and the people with the most capital, who are able to kind of take advantage of the MEV or kind of tweak the system in their favor. And so, kind of like you were mentioning earlier, like, you have to define what fair means to you. And for some people, fair might be survival of the fittest. Whoever is the most the most capable gets to buy it. But I think a lot of people don't have that definition. I think a lot of people, fair would be more like everyone gets like an equal opportunity at the sale, or something like that, or it's random. So the IDO, the pure IDO with no kind of add-ons, is a very undemocratic techno race for the tokens. So
gotcha. That was a very good way. That was crystal clear. I appreciate that. That helps a lot. Okay, so then I almost feel, if my natural intuition is the survival of the fittest camp, because I'm almost sort of like, what are you doing? Going to penalize people because they're on their game? Like, isn't that kind of part of the game? Like, if they
you're probably right, and it's like it's your prerogative to say, hey, listen, I'm the most capable. I can come in here and I can work it and I can get it. There's nothing wrong with that. However, when you're looking at a team and they're looking at their distribution, it may not be like the team style to say, like, we're going to have a bloodbath to see who deserves these the most, right?
Sure.
It might not be.
I appreciate the need for I understand the problem. And so then the solution, so then walk me into the solution. How's the solution what are some potential solutions? What does the solution space look like?
Yeah. So the Launchpad solution, I suppose, and I think we do it pretty well, but overall is still pretty bad. And we were like, the Launchpads maybe were kind of a reaction to the IDO, and we were kind of a reaction to the Launchpad space as it was unfolding. Because what you often saw with the Launchpads was, you can hold some amount of our token for either a chance to or a guaranteed allocation, but you have to hold a lot of it. And beyond that, there was like very, very, very small constricted sales. So $50,000, $100,000, maybe, at the maximum. And what we saw happening is, teams really with the best of intentions, probably just getting, bad advice from, VCs and advisors. Cause like, there's so many facets to this space beyond technology and the way this stuff comes together. And that's kind of like what we deal in most of the time. It is really, really oversized private rounds, and then a very, very, very small slice of the pie for the public, which are actually sort of the users and the people that are going to hold the token long term and go on to use the product and be your supporters. And so it was pretty backwards. You were asking the public people to buy this at a real ungodly multiple over seed and private, and a very small amount of it too. And so right there, you can start to clean that up pretty well, just by bringing some equality across these rounds, provided the team is willing to do that. And that, again, that's part of what we do. It's not math. There's no computer science here. This is like working with people and teams to figure out how we can get people involved and what's fair and what can work for the application. And I think the good teams are willing to go through this with us now, because they know we have a big, strong community of people that are going to be good holders and supporters of their token. So we kind of leverage that, that position and that authority as representatives of our community, and kind of broker a better deal, basically. And people trust us to do that.
Yeah, that's cool. I totally see the vision. So what does it look like as a token holder? If I get XAVA, presumably I hold it. What does the full experience look like for me trying to invest into the next big startup that's going to launch on your Launchpad?
Yeah. And so the stuff I'm talking about now about like, you know, the art of the deal, that's come much later, right? That's only come with some of our success and our ability to exert influence on behalf of the community. You know, there has to be a mechanism in here in place for fairness, you know, regardless of what we're able to make happen, right? And so the sale works like this. We have, let's just say, $500,000 of public sale tokens available. So there's 2 rounds. The first round is for the Avalanche validators. And this is something that is, you know, unique to our platform. No one's ever like really done this before on any network. And, you know, I think speaks to, you know, our desire to just try to make things happen for the network. And so you come to our application, you do have to KYC. We can talk about like why that is and why that's useful later. But we have a lot of validators who have KYC'd with us, like 34% of the entire network have KYC'd with us because they want to be able to participate in these sales. And so if you're a validator, you just get a guaranteed allocation. And we usually break off somewhere between 5 and 10% of the sale. And we just split it evenly between them. And you register, and then in that 12-hour window, we give the validators 12 hours. You can come, claim the allocation or not. It's sort of like a thank you for playing kind of thing. We appreciate you. Whatever isn't sold goes into that next round, that is the staking round. And this is where it gets a little more complex. And so you do have to hold the Zava token to participate, but there are no minimums, right? Which is uncommon, and there are a maximum. So what that suggests is anyone has the ability to participate, and that no one person can come in and just take some outsized proportion of the sale. Now, because anyone can kind of, as long as you're willing to KYC, come and participate. What happens is you have a lot of people who are essentially competing for the same tokens. So it's on our job to make sure that we take this distribution of stakers and distribute it fairly. And part of the way that we do that is by imposing a maximum cap. So, and it changes sale to sale, depending on demand, which has only been going up recently. So if you have, let's just say $40,000 of the Zava token or 2 million, you know, you'll still just get that cap, right? And if we were to distribute those tokens linearly, right, or proportionally based on stake, you know, those guys would get a lot more. But what we actually do is we take what they should have gotten and give it to the smaller guys down below. And so there's a bit of like robbing from the rich and giving to the poor happening here, because, you know, that's sort of the only way we can achieve what we're after. But we're willing to have a conversation with the community about why it's happening this way and why it's necessary. And, you know, this is the way that we are able to include everyone at this point. And, you know, it's not like they go anywhere else. They don't unstake, you know, they still do great with their rather large allocation. They just can't take the whole sale. And, you know, there's things about our staking contracts that do reward people proportionally to their stake. You know, our allocation staking contract is more like kind of like a farm on steroids. So one way you can think about it is you're staking your Zava, you're earning an APY off of people coming into the farm, which we take a fee on and redistribute in Zava. You're earning APY on the fee we take from allocations when you take your allocation in Zava. And then we also juice it a little bit with like ecosystem rewards. So you're just kind of in this farm earning a Zava, you know, and then as sales come along, you decide I want to register, right? But there's a reason to be in this farm regardless. And so as our sales get bigger, as the ecosystem gets bigger, and they are getting bigger, you know, we started at 400,000, we're doing $1 million IDOs here soon. You know, your potential to earn grows with the ecosystem, right? Grows as Avalanche grows, at least indirectly. That's how we like to think about it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So like, question, percentage wise, how many of the validators do you think invest? How many actually claim their percentage and actually invest on average?
Right now, you know, let's say, I think there's what, like 1,010 validators or something like that.
Well, I think there's like 1,100 right now.
1,100, yeah. I mean, the last sale we had almost 400 participate.
That's amazing,
wow.
dude. That is so cool.
So a lot of them.
That's a great
Right.
idea that you set aside an amount for the validators. That's such a good idea, like to catalyze the ecosystem growth and to get the actual stakeholders of the ecosystem, people we know care about the ecosystem because they've already got 2,000 at least Avok staked.
Right.
We've already got skin in the game to give them an opportunity to get in on every new project. Dude, that is such a good idea. Good idea.
And those guys have done really, really well with their allocations, like really well. And they don't have to do anything but just show up, and some people thought that was a bad idea, right? Like when you're designing a system, like and you're looking at it just with no emotion involved, those people really aren't contributing, not to the Zava token economy. What they're actually doing is they're taking away allocation from the people that are. But so there are decisions that have to be made here about, is that sacrifice worth it? Obviously, I think it was. You seem to think like it was. But if you're being like ruthless about it, right? You could make a case for not including them.
Yeah, so I think it's also interesting that you said the validators get to go first instead of the Zava people, but the Zava holders. But one point that I wanted to draw attention to was when you want to hold a token sale like this, a problem that people frequently run into with imposing some kind of cap or maximum is a Sybil attack, which is a common attack in blockchain kind of economics. And so if any of our users aren't familiar, basically a Sybil attack is when you can create fake identities to try to appear to be more people than you are. So for example, if there's each address can claim a maximum of 1 token, I could create a bunch of different addresses and each have them claim 1 token. So I can violate the 1 token per customer rule by creating a lot of addresses. And so you guys actually don't have this problem because one thing that, you said that, there's a maximum amount that you can withdraw. And so I would say that, well, why don't I just split my Zava into 2 wallets and then, get double the allocation? But you guys KYC. So because you do that KYC process, then that greatly reduces the feasibility for implementing this kind of attack, especially at scale. Like one thing with Sybil attacks, it's not all, when you're trying to limit something to like 1 customer, 1 item, it's not necessarily, you're never probably going to be perfect. There's probably some people that, can just register a spouse or something like that and get to, but you make it hard to take advantage of at scale. And, you prevent one person from taking everything.
Right. And
So,
it's not perfect. I mean, it can't be, right. But it greatly reduces it, and it removes the ability for everyone to just sort of be willing to try. And this was one of the things that came out of like our launch on Pangolin, because we had bots come in and it just didn't go well. And the bots like came in and out, but like that stain is not something you want for any length of time. And so it really drove us to take a closer look about how to control our launches. And the KYC was something that came out of that, because, a lot of people don't like KYC, and, understandably, but, ultimately it is important that we have some reasonable degree of certainty that this isn't happening to the point where KYC is necessary.
And I think the fairness that you talk about is so crucial, because when it comes to launching a new project, the process now is token first, project later, or, token project same time. People don't come out and run their project for a year anymore before doing their token. So the token launch is like one of the first big impact moments with your community. And this is like your chance. You can either do it well or do it poorly. And I think the problem with the survival of the fittest approach, even if you think that that's fair, is that all the people who don't get their tokens or who get dumped on are not going to think that's fair. And those are your customers, those are your community. And so if you tick all those people off, then you're really setting yourself up for failure, because most of these projects, like, we all have competitors. We all have, competition, and we all have to, even if you're in a kind of monopoly, there's too many other interesting opportunities for people to stick around on projects that they don't like. And it's just a severe risk to launch with bad press.
Which got me wondering, do you have competition right now? I don't know of another IDO in our ecosystem. Is there one?
There are other IDO platforms, and some of them have, been here a long time. They do like other things as well, so that hasn't been their strict focus. And I think our focus is kind of our strength. Additionally, we were here very early, and we saw the opportunity that was coming sort of down the pike with Avalanche. I could see this from a mile away. I had been through a few different cycles. I had seen Ethereum. I knew what an early community
totally
promise looked and felt like.
Yeah,
And I,
that's
once
awesome.
once I woke up to that, I was like, this is where I'm going, and I'm going to be here for a long time. And so we had that advantage. And one of the things that advantage gave us is we had many, many months where we didn't ask for money. We didn't do sales. We just were a part of the community. We contributed where we could. And so that gave us a presence and authority that would be hard to replicate just because that moment in time doesn't exist anymore. So when we talk about competitors, well, one, there's plenty of IDOs, there's lots of sales to run, but we do things a very specific way. And we offer like a very specific type of community, and it's not necessarily right for everyone. And so the projects that it is right for and that it resonates with, we're probably a good option. But there are other IDO platforms for sure.
So what does the process look like? So if I'm a new DeFi protocol, new NFT project, whatever, I have a token I want to launch, I guess, what are some of the strategic decisions that you help a partner walk through? And what does that process look like?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's changed over time. It looked a lot different 6 months ago than it does today, right? Because the ecosystem just grown so much. But the first 5 sales we did, these were like the end result of a very long working relationship with these teams. Kaleo, where these were guys we had known for 6 months in the earliest days, and we just knew this was an event we wanted to work toward together. We helped them with tokenomics and whatever help they might have needed. We were there to support them through it. And so in the earliest days, when there wasn't a ton of activity and demand, we had the challenge and luxury of just working really closely with projects we liked, knowing that we were heading toward this kind of ideal event. Now it looks a little different because the market is really, really hot. The ecosystem is really, really hot. You have a ton of people that previously were not considering building on Avalanche that now are. And so it really is a kind of a qualitative, not scientific process. And it starts with the people involved, because where if someone's a big rush to do an IDO and they're like, I'm the hottest project and Avalanche is hot and you're great now, so we should definitely work together, but we got to do it in 7 days. It's a non-starter. It's just the wrong fit. We need to have a really personal relationship as best we can with these teams, because we have such a big community now that when we turn to them, we say, hey, we're doing an IDO, it's such a huge responsibility. All these people were saying this is worth potentially your time and money. And we cannot get anywhere near that level of confidence in that short amount of time. So the project just has to be a little earlier. We have to have time to understand who they are and how they're going about doing things. And even the IDO process, it's not rocket science, but it's tricky and it's a lot of work, and stuff does come up and it does go wrong. And so you have to know that you're going to be able to work with these people. And in that critical moment, you have a relationship with them and you can rely on them to do what needs to be done. It seems pretty simple on the surface, but it's actually pretty complex. All of these variables around communities and investors and VCs and listings, it's this whole morass of stuff that needs to be very well executed and very well timed. So you really need to have a good partner. So that's where we start. And if that's not there, it just won't work. And beyond that, we just look for really, really good teams interested in building good things here. I often get the question what kind of sales do you run? What do you think needs to be built here? And I used to try and think of an answer for that, but it doesn't really matter what I think, because if it's not here, it doesn't matter. So what we do is we kind of stand back, we observe the culture, what's coming in, who's interested, who's not, what seems good, who's actually getting the community here at Avalanche, because that's a big part of it. The Avalanche community don't put up with bullshit. That's the difference between, they're very sharp, They're very vocal, you know, kind of like that early Ethereum stuff. And so half of what I'm doing is like, are they going to survive these guys? Because they're so like appropriately cynical at this point and skeptical. So it's a very like qualitative process. Again, it's just hard to replicate.
So
But
like
the way
if I have a startup and I'm trying to raise $1 million, let's say we have a startup of 10 people and, you know, we've been around a year, we've got some traction. What does it actually look like for me and you to do this relationship? Do I have to spin up a team with the person who acts as our interface? Do you guys in-house somebody from your org to our org? How do you guys get paid? Like what is the actual look like?
Yeah, so we don't take any fees. We don't like, you know, nothing. We don't ask for any tokens. You know, sometimes we invest if it's available, and we go to work for that investment, really. Sometimes we have, sometimes we haven't, but a lot of times we do this for free for our token holders. That's just kind of like the way we do it. So let's just say we decide that we want to do your IDO, we'll work together for at least a month. Kind of understanding the product and helping the team get their post IDO strategy together, from like listing to community building inside of Avalanche and beyond. And then as we get closer to the sale, the two teams will work very, very closely together, onboarding, getting the token contract set up, getting all the vesting, everything sort of sorted, and then we'll do the sale. And the sale lasts 24 hours. So again, you know, there's no like rush to do this. Like if you register, you can come back in that 12-hour window and just buy it easy, right? It's a great way to take the stress and the FOMO out of a situation that's typically just 100% composed of those things.
And it sounded like you said you work with us on the contract. So does that mean you have engineering that's actually doing code work? And do you do auditing, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we don't do any auditing or anything, but each of our sale contracts, like we deploy a contract for each sale. And so the team will, depending on, you know, whether their token is minted or not, and sometimes it isn't, you know, fund these contracts. We'll set up the vesting, because if there's vesting that needs to happen even around the public sale, which is more and more common these days, especially with larger public sales, you know, we can do that through our platform too. So it's just kind of about like understanding their tokenomics and their needs, setting up our sale contracts to accommodate those things, you know, and then we do a pretty like long marketing cycle. We do a lot of content. We try and do interviews like this, you know, AMAs with, you know, decent questions, not just like fluff, like try and get to the hardest stuff. We want people to understand why we think this is good. And, you know, we try and get these people front and center in our community so they can understand if it's something they want to participate in or not. And they generally do.
And where do you see, like, maybe there's multiple answers here. I'll open the door to multiple answers, but to you, what does success look like for this? So let me outline some potential success scenarios. So success scenario one is you build out like the next, I forget what they're called, angel invest, or like one of those small sort of startup ecosystems that has a lot of different, you know, tech input and money. And then this software that you're building, this so-called framework, all these little pieces of software come together and end up being some type of little platform that in and of itself has value and is ultimately acquired by somebody like Google Ventures or something. In other words, you guys end up being like a startup yourselves, and you get acquired by somebody in the, you know, tech investment blockchain space, which is surely there must be that kind of stuff out there. Scenario number two, you guys invest in these startups, and somehow through that investment you end up making capital, and that's successful. You know, startup three, or success scenario three, maybe just simply through your investments in Avalounch you become successful. I'm just wondering, like, for you personally, what does success look like for you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm happy to like report that when I first started this, like our definition of success was kind of be positioned to help teams when Avalanche gets popular. And I think we've done that, you know, and that feels really good. It feels like really validating because we worked really hard for it. And that's all we ever wanted to do. Like the token sale thing, like I didn't like dream of doing token sales, but like it's such a natural extension of like how to help teams kind of get started, and like, you know, you got to do something, right? But at the end of the day, we're helping a lot of teams, incubating teams, formally and informally, more informally. Like, we don't commit to this stuff. We just try and help because it's just, there's not enough time in the day. But we're doing that now. And, and beyond that, like, I can see us doing this for a long time. We're just getting started. Like, quite frankly, Avalanche got more popular more quickly than I thought it would. Like, I thought we'd kind of be, much, not to doubt anyone,
Yeah,
but
you
got to hedge, right?
I agree. Yeah.
And we were sort of used to kind of sitting on our hands, because in the earlier days, like, there wasn't, like, I wasn't prepared to, like, ask anyone for money for this stuff. It was just it was too early. We got really lucky, because who knows, maybe we launched too early, but we found ways to make ourselves, again, useful, and that was helpful. But I was getting to the point where I was like, shit, like, we need to do an IDO. You know what I mean? We've been here for like 9 months. And then just, like, sort of like overnight, like, the bridge went up, and that was awesome. And then the rush thing happened, and it was just like the stars aligned, and it all worked out. And, I certainly don't take credit for any of that.
And now we have Blizzard. It's something I also just wanted to mention. So recently, a $220 million investment fund called Blizzard just got launched by the Avalanche Foundation. So, there's the Avalanche X grant. So that's for grants. These are non-investments. These are just moonshot projects. We want to seed this project with some capital so that they can just go try and, go to the moon, literally. There is Avalanche Rush, which is an incentivization program. It started out as 180 million, but what it was, I believe it was a certain amount of AVOX set aside. How many? It was 100,000 at $18 a piece, whatever it was. It was when the token was $18 a piece. So whatever 180 million is. But since then, the increase in the amount of AVOX valuation has caused that fund to increase in value, if that makes sense. We denominated in AVOX, and the USD value has gone up, basically. So there's Avalanche X for grants. There's Avalanche Rush for incentivizing all the blue chip dApps to come over from other EVM ecosystems, and we've been incredibly successful. And now there's Avalanche Blizzard, which is an ecosystem investment fund, which is 220 million. So right now there's a significant amount of capital that is on-ramping businesses and dApps into our ecosystem. And I can only imagine that this is going to accelerate adoption of your platform.
Yeah. And anytime that stuff gets announced, I wouldn't even need to read it. We feel it. Like, the interest in the ecosystem just goes way, way up, and you start, like, getting messages and calls and whatever.
You feel it. You feel it as FOMO. That's that.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, I was around in the early days of Ethereum, and, there was just something about that was, like, magical to me, and Avalanche was, like, my chance to kind of potentially be early to that and help. And, like, that's all I ever really wanted to do. And, I was on a call the other day with an IDO that we'll be running, next month. And, like, I think this is going to be, like, a really important project. And I was kind of sitting there, and I was just like, oh shit, like, this is really cool to even just be a little part of. Because that's the stuff that keeps this running, us day to day, is really just, like, trying to fucking help. Like, it really does just mean everything to us. And so as long as we keep that spirit at the center of what we're doing, which we've always done, and what's always been at the heart of who we're about, is, like, having fun, trying to be successful, helping, being in crypto, doing weird crypto stuff. Like, this stuff's all a lot of fun. And that's all we really ever wanted to do. And so we had to develop a platform around that to achieve that. But the IDO is, like, kind of not the thing. And I know that's, like, sort of weird, but everything is sort of happening behind it. And then, our token holders in our community get to reap the benefit.
This has been so educational for me. And I think some of my big takeaways, I just want to recap a little bit, is that, I'm just really surprised that how early you actually need to get in on the process with you. I thought kind of the IDO relationship would be, we have our tokenomics, we just need to figure out a way to distribute it fairly. And it's, like, kind of very last minute, but you're much more earlier in the process, and you do enjoy collaborating and, like, working with trying to figure out, how should you structure a private sale? How should you structure a public scale sale?
Right.
What should a team allocation look like? All of those things. And just the actual nature of it is a partnership, as opposed to just a software as a service kind of business relationship. I think, those two things are, really interesting for me to learn and kind of understand about your platform. One thing I do want to talk about is there's a great limitation to your platform right now, which eats my soul a little bit, because I do reside in the United States of America, and I think the biggest criticism of Zava right now, Avalanche right now, not that this is your fault, but just the reality of the situation is that it's not available to U.S. citizens.
Yeah.
And so can you talk about a little bit, like, why is that? Is that going to be the case forever?
No,
what
it
can
won't be.
US citizens do on the platform now?
Right. It won't be the case forever. There's certain jurisdictions, the US being a big one, that can't participate. And I think people forget, like, we present and behave as a very large professional sort of entity, but we're just normal guys trying to like help teams out. And when we first started this, we had no sense of sort of whether this would work or if it would be big or whatever. And the idea of the legal sort of overhead of accepting US people and the work that would need to be done and the money that would need to be spent to get that sorted before we ever did a sale is just like, it was far too onerous. Like, it wasn't quite worth it. So our team is based in the US, right? And we're doing token sales. And so it's like, we're already kind of skating on thin ice here. And so we are doing this very incrementally. And now, I maybe naively did not expect it to be such an issue. That was probably naive of me. Or maybe it was like willful ignorance. But we're starting to look at it. We're starting to look at it now with our lawyers about how and in what ways we can accommodate these people that aren't able to participate now. And it's like, it's more risky, more expensive, but now we're in a position where we can, start to take on some of that risk and cost, whereas before we just weren't. We just sort of had to play it safe, rather safe than sorry. And that was really the position. It wasn't because we didn't want to or didn't see the value in it. But the regulatory landscape in the US is terrible, and it's scary, even when you're operating like ethically, inappropriately. And so we weren't prepared to navigate that, quite frankly.
This is actually really interesting to me. I didn't think it was even remotely possible. I thought this was all like mostly illegal, but I guess there is actually some potential like ways through if you're willing to put the time, effort, and money into it, is what you're saying. Or should I guess, I thought U.S. citizens would just be totally banned by default.
So there are, an incremental step there that we're looking at would be like, accredited investors in the U.S., that have some, kind of standing as a more sophisticated investor. Like, that's one option. And we're not going to upend the regulation here in the U.S. Like, if Coinbase can't do it, like, we can't do it. But we are exploring it because it's obviously important to people. We want to be here for a long time, and we do want to include people. So the best answer I have for that is it is actually something that's become a priority for us really recently, and then we started to look at it more closely. Whereas before it was just about getting the platform out, making sure people liked it, making sure it worked. It's really scary and hard. We're taking in a lot of money, and it was kind of like, this is just not for now.
Yeah. And this is, I think, an interesting thing just with the regulatory landscape the way it is. And being in Lisbon last week, everyone was talking about the golden visa, which is basically a way, honestly, to buy residency and buy citizenship in Portugal. Wow. For, I think it was like 350,000 euro. If you buy a 350,000 euro house, you basically can get residency, a free visa. Well, not free. You get a visa to live in Portugal. There's no residency requirement. I think you only have to be there like 2 weeks over like 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And after 5 years, you can apply for citizenship. And if with EU citizenship, you could live, you'd get Portuguese citizenship, but you could use that, as long as the EU stays together, you could use it to live anywhere in the EU. So wow. If you, those of you out there who are like, man, I really want to invest in Exava and you're willing to play a long game.
Buy a villa in Lisbon.
Yeah. And honestly, I think when I was there, like, I think the average rent in Portugal is like 600 euros a month for a place. I don't know how many bedrooms that is, but if you put, $500,000 into a house, you probably get something pretty nice.
I would think so. Yeah, I mean, people that I know that have done well in crypto, you know, they're like they're just driven out of the country. They go other places. You know, it's just like it's too hard. Taxes are too rough, and they just leave.
Yeah, I mean, it's really unfortunate that I think it's something. If you're just like, well, I know all the alpha, I know which projects there are projects that are going to be great to invest in, but I can't do it. So I'm just losing money by staying here. I'm losing opportunities. I'm like totally happy, like following all regulations, paying all taxes, whatever. It's just that like I especially my income stream might even become like precarious at some point. Like, can I continue to work for a crypto company?
Right.
Just the way that I think some regulators also talk about writing these regulations is so incredibly broad that it would almost criminalize every kind of crypto activity whatsoever, which I don't think is their goal, but it doesn't really matter if they accidentally implement that. So, I mean, I think you have to be thinking like, are there other options? Are there things that you'd consider? And so that's something I think about a lot. Are there other places I'd be willing to live? And it's especially tempting when places are making an effort to recruit people and innovating. Like Estonia, for a long time has offered e-citizenship to try to recruit people, and now Portugal is trying to make a pathway to a visa, pathway to citizenship, possible for high income and high income foreigners and stuff. So you got to look into these opportunities, and I'm very interested to see where the world goes, and it's something that I think about a lot.
Yeah, well, I do too, and I don't want to be thinking about it. I'm sort of like forced to.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly it. It's just like most people would probably prefer not to move, not to have to change anything about their lives, but when you give them a severe grass is greener literally anywhere else, it's just, this is the reality.
Yeah.
I think ultimately what's going to happen is there will be some different nations that make it so appealing to entrepreneurs or people who have money in crypto that it will hopefully in the medium term force nations like the United States to ultimately have to retroact their laws to be more crypto friendly because these other places will start leapfrogging them, and it's happening. It's no longer it might happen. It's happening. We're talking about it right now. There's no question about it. In Lisbon, every single person there was like, yeah, I've got 350 grand on it. Like, fuck yeah. If I want to move to Lisbon and get a place here. Like, I mean, it's happening. It's already happening. So I'm confident it's going to happen because I've seen it happening.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's unfortunate, like driving out innovation, driving out the good money. But I mean, it doesn't surprise me either. You start like, we're a long ways from this, but you start playing with DeFi stuff and you're like, holy shit, I can see why they're terrified of this.
Oh yeah, for sure. 100%. Yep. Yeah. Okay.
But this could be a long-term good thing. I think this is the competition breeds excellence. So, I think the US has enjoyed a long period of little global competition in the economic sphere. And so hopefully now, if they actually have to try to keep people, hopefully that'll lead to a better environment here that's more favorable.
Yep. Awesome. All right, you guys, it's been about an hour. I want to be very respectful of Mark's time, so I think we're going to start wrapping it up. Usually we just go around, pass the mic around for last final thoughts. So let's start with you, Mark. Anybody on your team you want to give a shout out to? Anything you want to one last second shine a light on from your project or your team?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's a good call. I definitely want to say, thank you to my entire team. Everyone, it works so hard. This requires so much work. It's from me to the admins to our marketing people. I mean, those fucking admins are like the real heroes. I'll tell you what. And I mean it. Like, it is stuff so grueling. So I want to thank them. But thank you guys too for having me on. It's been great to finally connect. This is kind of like a Subnet show. It's a milestone for me. And I'm into it, so thanks. I was elated to get the message.
Awesome. You have an open-ended invitation.
Nice.
Yeah, anytime you want to come back, let us know, and you can join us anytime. All right, Connor, last minute thoughts?
No, yeah, like I said, this is it's been really great chatting with you, Mark, and learning about the platform. And I think you guys really do a great job, and I'm very, very bullish on your future, getting to actually talk about some of this stuff. I think you guys have really put a lot of thought into like what makes a successful DeFi project, what makes a successful token launch. And I'm not sure if tokens will be the future forever, but they are certainly the present.
Long enough.
And maybe sustainable revenues will return one day. Who knows? But until such a day happens, I mean, the token is the token is the present, and I think it's one of those things that there's just no rules. Like nobody has written the textbook of crypto tokenomics. Like the rule, people, the common knowledge, the best practice changes every few weeks, and we're going to find out that the common practice was totally flawed, totally wrong, and this is just the era of experimentation and mistakes. But I think you guys have been fantastic experimenters. You've made some mistakes, you've done some things right, but you've definitely iterated your process and come up with something that I think is really about as fair as anything else as I have seen for putting together a launch. And yeah, I'm really excited about your future.
Appreciate that. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so yeah, just I want to reiterate what I said earlier. When I left Lisbon and came back to San Francisco, it really hit me. I just feel incredibly inspired and rejuvenated, and so I just want to try and pass some of that inspiration on to other people who are watching this. There's a couple things I want to say. Number one, like, it's worth taking a step back and getting the entire picture of everything and bottling that up right now, because this is really what it feels like to be successful. And you might feel like you have a lot of deadlines, you might feel like a lot of pressure, you might be feeling that stuff, but that's what success feels like. And so I think it's important sometimes you can step back and uncork the bottle and get a little whiff of it and remember, like, this is what it feels like to be successful. This is a very special moment in time. I've been working on many projects over the years, and there's no question about it. This is that magic moment. It's really, really cool. And then, number two, just I feel so incredibly inspired by what we're working on and what we're building, man. If you just go to ecosystem.avox.network and get a sense of all the stuff that's happening on our network, we've only been live 14 months, man. And it's going absolutely crazy. Just between Avalanche Exagrant, Avalanche Rush, and Avalanche Blizzard, there's close to $1 billion in funds that are investing to the Avalanche ecosystem. Imagine all of the dApps and teams and projects that are going to emerge from that $1 billion. Like, it's incredible to think about what's going on. So there's never been a better time to have a great idea, find like-minded people, raise capital, and change the freaking world and make a fortune. So I just want to, inspire other people to do that and hopefully do it on Avalanche. So if you made this far,
building off that,
yeah.
I just want to say, if you have the opportunity to go to a crypto conference, I highly recommend it. I think if you felt any, ETH Lisbon, Avalanche House FOMO, Avalanche House will rise again. And we're planning a strong presence over the next year. And if whether or not you're an Avalanche maxi or an ETH maxi or whatever, I think there's just such a value in meeting other members of the community and just seeing who you're building the future with. And I was so inspired by all of the people I met, who I had interacted with online, some people I never knew. And it was so cool to make those connections and just talk about all of the cool stuff that people are building. And it was really inspiring to me, but I just highly recommend anyone to go. It was an extremely high ROI event for us too. It's definitely worth the trip, because there's so many partnerships you can make. You can make deals, you can just get intros to people. Recruiting. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from a business perspective, we totally, got a lot out of it. We were able to connect other people and put other projects together just, by mutual acquaintances and stuff like that. And so it was definitely, a huge success. Avalanche House will definitely happen again. But yeah, start looking at your calendar. I think the hardest part about the crypto conferences is knowing which ones are going to be the viral ones. Which ones are going to be the big ones. I think ETH Barcelona in late Q1, I think, is probably going to be another really big one. So I have no promises about what programming will be there or anything like that, but I think that's a great one to target if you're looking in the very near future. So that's the last about I'll say about that.
Yeah, that's it. I agree 100%. It's time to connect in the real world with people. The digital and the analog are converging, and our work is a big part of that. And so it's nice to go out and meet people like today, finally putting a face to a name with Mark. We've talked a couple different times in meetings, but it's cool to finally, close the loop. And so thanks for everybody for making it this far. We're going to sign off as usual from Snowflake to Avalanche and through consensus to the stars. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Cheers.
Awesome.